major announcement. Join the community right now. It's official. I have a brand new Discord server, Reddit page, and a brand new Facebook page. All of these communities will cover tons of new content and updates on the channel. I will also be making an official series of fanfiction requests on these new communities, plus tons of community shoutouts. You will hear about the new events in the works, updates, giveaways, and more. It's never been such a great time to join the MTP multiverse. What if events went differently in Spider-Man 2? What if Peter Parker had lost his spider powers forever? Have you ever thought about this fanfiction? I bet you have. Welcome back to the channel, my fellow watchers of the multiverse, where I will be diving into a highly requested Spider-Man 2 What If. Before I dive into it, I want to give a huge shout out to my new subreddit, Facebook page, and Discord server. Are you looking to have those requests heard? Well, join my new communities as I will be making exclusive fanfiction shorts about each request and interacting with you about the multiverse. And I also want to add that I will be doing more community shoutouts with all of these new communities. It's been a long time since I've been active on all of these platforms, but Miss the Part will be coming to everything. That being said, join me as we embark on a journey and explore the multiple choices made by the inhabitants of the multiverse and how they affect reality. Peter Parker's life wasn't turning out the way that he had hoped it would. He was stressed and running out of steam. Unfortunately, things were happening to him everywhere all at once. The Daily Bugle was unrelenting in their smearing reporting about him. In frustration, he decided to stop taking photos of himself as Spider-Man to sell to them. As a result of that, J. Jonah Jameson was threatening to fire him if he did not have any new photos of the bug. His job as the delivery driver for Joe's Pizza was over because he was always late for his shifts. The last straw was when he had failed to deliver 7 pizza boxes in the time frame of 29 minutes, which had automatically made the pizza free for the customers. His boss, Mr. Aziz, did not waste any time in firing him, saying that Peter was wholly unreliable. School was no better too. He arrived for his classes after they were over. His grades were declining, and he had an overdue paper about fusion to submit to Dr. Connors. He planned to write his about the research undertaken by Dr. Octavius. Octavius was a physicist who was working with Oscorp. There was an enduring threat by Dr. Connors to give Peter a failing grade if that paper was not submitted. Peter really wanted to do better, but there was just no time to do any of this stuff. At home, Aunt May was already defaulting on the mortgage because there wasn't enough money to keep paying it anymore because Uncle Ben was dead. There was not enough income to keep paying the bills on the house. Peter wished he could help, but he was broke with no money anymore, and he couldn't bear to look Aunt May in the eye while she was struggling like that. His love life wasn't any better. He tried severely to build a relationship with Mary Jane Watson, but he kept letting her down. She had gotten accepted as an actress in plays, but he had never made it to see any of them. He had actually bought tickets several times, but something had always come up to make him miss them. In his defense, Spider-Man's duties stopped him on concentrating on his relationships with Mary Jane and his friends. And now it was strained. MJ faulted him for treating her like she wasn't important. After all, Harry Osborn and Aunt May had always seen her plays, but Peter himself had never showed up. And to crown it all off, he was losing his spider powers. He was unable to shoot webs and climb walls. It seemed the stress had finally gotten to him. He tried severely to function, but he kept failing. His eyesight became bad again, like they had when he did not have the powers. He now had to use his old eyeglasses to see properly again. He was frustrated and sad, but he decided to stop trying to regain his powers. He took it as a sign that he needed to fix up his life. Peter arrived at the house to a surprise party for him. He had totally forgotten that it was his birthday. Harry Osborn and Mary Jane were there along with Aunt May. They had even made a cake for him. He was grateful to see them there. Harry was not happy with Peter for taking photos of Spider-Man, who he blamed for the death of his father, Norman Osborn. Harry did not fail to let his displeasure known and felt by Peter. Peter then told Harry that he wanted to write a paper about the research of Doctor Octavius. On hearing about Doctor Octavius, Harry brightened up and said that the physicist was marvelous and his research would fetch Oscorp a lot of money. Harry went on to say that he would be happy to introduce Peter to Doctor Octavius, and Peter agreed. The next day, Peter walked into Oscorp alongside with Harry Osborn. Harry was on high hopes and chanting happily. He greeted Dr. Otto Octavius and introduced him to Peter Parker. Parker said that he was writing a research paper on Otto and his research. The scientist on his part smiled humbly and told Peter to take his studies seriously. He also said that Oscorp was doing well by funding his research. Harry cut in saying that he was happy to do so, since Dr. Octavius' discovery was revolutionary science and earned Oscorp a shitload of money. At that, Harry left the room. Mrs. Octavius came in and met Peter. She talked about how she met and fell in love with him, and she was happy. She had left, and Peter looked around and saw what he rightfully guessed as the source of Harry's excitement. Dr. Octavius said that it was his design to initiate and sustain fusion. He explained that it would be a perpetual sun, constantly supplying renewable energy. Peter somehow expressed concern about the stability. Peter, however, expressed concern about the stability of this fusion reactor. He said that the slightest miscalculation could be catastrophic. At that, Dr. Octavius snapped at Peter, saying that the stabilizing fusion was his life's work, and he knew what he was doing, and what would happen if the reactor was not stabilized. Peter said that he did not mean to offend Dr. Octavius, and the scientists relaxed. Dr. Otto Octavius remarked that Peter's intelligence was nice. He said that intelligence was a gift, and the gift was used to better the lives of all mankind. After more talk, Octavius said that he needed to leave to prepare for the presentation later that night, and history will be made. Peter then said that he would leave too, because he had plans to attend the public presentation of the new fusion reactor. Harry Osborn was beside himself with excitement. Peter stood with him among the small crowd of investors, scientists, and journalists. Dr. Otto Octavius began his speech with a joke, which everyone laughed to. He told everyone that he had created a fusion-based energy source, which would provide clean and sustainable energy for the world. Dr. Octavius then unveiled a set of 4 arms. He called them inhabitants, which were created for the purpose of creating fusion. They were impressive to heat and magnetize. He then connected himself to the arms. He said that all the arms were controlled by a neural link, which was connected to his brain. Peter was astounded by what he saw. Dr. Octavius explained that the arms could create and control fusion in an environment that no human hands could ever operate in. One journalist, who was, however, skeptical, claiming that the advanced artificial intelligence which powered the arms could assess superiority over the commands of Otto Octavius' brain. Dr. Octavius replied that he was aware of the risks. That's why he had created an inhibitor chip located at the base of his skull. Its function was simply to make sure that he remained in control of the arms. On hearing that, Harry nodded approvingly. Dr. Octavius then moved onto the reactor's arches. He retrieved an element of tritium, which he said was produced through the financial aid of Harry Osborn and Oscorp Industries. Harry happily announced that he was glad to pay the bills. Dr. Octavius, through the use of his arms, dropped the tritium in the middle of the arches. It stayed suspended in space in the middle. He then put on a pair of dark glasses to shield his eyes. With a few taps on the computer by his side, Octavius activated the arches, which concentrated energy currents on the tritium and activated it. A moment later, a golden sun, the size of a gym ball, appeared. The audience awed. They were surprised to see how the tritium worked. 2 seconds later, a technician manning the computer screens announced that they had a successful fusion reaction. There was a loud applause, and he further said that they were now proceeding 1,000 megawatts surplus of electricity. The applause got louder. Harry Osborn was beaming with pride. Then, things began to go wrong. All metal in the room began leaning to the reactor. People's necklaces, earrings, rings, even the metal lamp holders were all leaning to the reactor. Peter watched with rising concern. The energy began spiking, and Doctor Octavius was working to control it. A computer began beeping fast, and Octavius nervously informed the crowd that the reactor was stabilizing. The reactor, however, did the exact opposite. The technician announced that there was a containment breach, just as all the metal pieces flew right into the reactor. One of the fusion energy rings flew into the ceiling, and the crowd gasped. They began to run away. Octavius looked at his wife, who was watching him with fear in her eyes. A computer cabinet began flying towards the reactor, and Osborn was in the way. At the time, Harry was screaming to Dr. Octavius to unplug the reactor, but the scientist wasn't listening. Peter saw the cabinet heading for Harry, and without thinking, he stretched out his arms and shot webs, but the webs did not come out. He ran to Harry and knocked him out of trajectory of the cabinet just in time. Harry thanked Peter. The glass windows and its metal panels were pulled by the magnetic force of the reactor, and it went right into the only 2 people in its way, Dr. Octavius and his wife. The mechanical arm shielded Dr. Otto Octavius, but his wife wasn't so fortunate. The glasses penetrated her skin, killing her instantly. Octavius screamed. Then another breach happened as a ring of energy touched his skin and electrocuted him. The force of the electrocution destroyed the inhibitor chip. Peter then ran to the wall and pulled out all of the cables that connected the reactor to the electricity. The reactor then expanded and collapsed in on itself, lying waste to the arches and rendering Dr. Otto Octavius unconscious. Peter Parker's life wasn't getting any better. The front page of the Daily Bugle said it all. Crime was up by 75%, and he wasn't able to do anything about it because technically he wasn't Spider-Man anymore. He didn't have the powers to even claim the name. He stood by the newsstand on the street that evening, mulling over the events that had happened over the past few days. Octavius, with his extra 4 arms, was on the loose. He had robbed a bank and there was no one to stop him. Harry was having depression. The stocks of Oscorp Industries had tanked after the fusion incident, and the company was on the verge of filing bankruptcy. The way things had turned out bad for Harry was just sad, and Peter was just helpless. His powers hadn't returned, so there was little to do about crime in New York. To make matters worse, Aunt May had been served with a foreclosure notice because she had not defaulted on the mortgage payment. She was going to leave the house and live in an apartment. He felt bad that he didn't have any money to settle the debt, and the bank wasn't interested in lending her money because she didn't have sufficient credit. A scream interrupted his thoughts, and he looked up from the newsstand and stared at the street ahead. A building was on fire, and someone was calling that a baby was trapped inside. Peter rushed to the building and stopped beside a man. He asked if anyone was inside, and the man said that they think there was a kid stuck on the 2nd floor. Peter looked around and didn't see any of the members of the fire department anywhere. He looked down at his hands and realized he would be attempting a rescue without the aid of the powers he had. He took a deep breath and told himself that he had done it before and could do it again. He then dashed into the building. Peter climbed the stairs and reached the 2nd floor. Fire was burning everywhere. A portion of the staircase overhead was already falling. He shook his head and wondered why buildings still used wood for critical areas. He heard some cries and ran towards the sound. He reached a door that was on fire. He leaned in and clearly heard cries coming from the other side. He tried opening the door, but the doorknob was too hot to grip, and the door itself refused to open. He tried pushing, but it didn't work. He then took a step back to access his options. Then he realized that his eyesight was blurry. He removed his glasses and made to clear them, but he realized that he couldn't see better. He tried the glasses on again and found that it was blurry. He removed it and could see clear again. He stashed it away in his pocket. Feeling shocked, Peter kicked the door down with amazing strength, and it flew off its hinges and fell to the ground. He then entered the room and was immediately aware of the ceiling falling. Because he was forewarned, he ducked out of the way of the falling ceiling. He was grateful that his spider sense did not fail him again. He followed the sound of cries to the closet in the wall. He stretched out his arms and shot webs which caught the closest door handles and pulled them apart. He parted the clothes in there and saw a little girl crying and calling for her mother. He picked her up and began to leave the room. The floor in the hallway caved, and Peter had to shoot a web to cling to the ceiling to avoid falling to the raging inferno below. The little girl screamed. Peter's spider sense began tingling, and he heard another scream. This one was coming from above. He weighed the thought of dropping off this girl downstairs or going with her to save this other person. He had misgivings about going there because he remembered the last time he jumped into a fire to save another person, and it was instead met with metal spikes from the Green Goblin. He swore to himself and found the stairs and began climbing up to meet this person. He reached the top floor and looked around. He began frantically searching the room, one room after another, until he heard cries and screams. He rushed to where it was coming from, and he entered the room and he found a teenager that he judged to be around 17 years old. He called out to her to follow him, and she ran to him. He held her hand, and they began running to the staircase. Then, the stairs began to give out. It started falling and reaching where they were standing. They stopped. Peter then handed the child to the teenager and held the girl's waist with his right arm. With his left hand, he shot a web, which it stuck to the ceiling. The stairs did collapse, and the three of them were dangling from the ceiling with the help of the web. Peter was about to swing out of there with one of the windows when the web disconnected from his wrist. He quickly shot another one, but it didn't make it to the ceiling. All three of them fell to the first floor, and the building collapsed around all of them. Peter woke up, and his eyes were immediately assaulted with harsh light. He squinted, and his head began aching. He felt something resting on his face, and air forcing its way through his nose. Aunt May's worried face came into focus, and a tear fell on his face, which she immediately wiped. She was squeezing his palm tightly. A nurse came in and pulled Aunt May away from Peter. A doctor showed up and began examining him. He told Peter that he was admitted into the hospital, and that Peter shouldn't try to move because his left arm was broken. Peter heard Aunt May sobbing somewhere in the background. The doctor informed Parker that he was a very brave person to go into the line of fire to save people, but unfortunately, they didn't make it out, as they died when the building collapsed. The doctor and nurses then left Peter and May. Peter cried, and Aunt May sobbed beside him. She said that she was thankful Peter was alive and well. She told Peter that he had been in a coma for 2 weeks, and she had been worried. She asked him what he was thinking, running into the fire like that. Peter gently squeezed Aunt May's hand and told her that he had something to say. He said that the previous year he had been bitten by a spider, and he had been given a gift with superhuman abilities. He told her that he was Spider-Man. She recoiled from him in shock. In tears, he told her that the death of Uncle Ben was an accident, and he blamed himself for it because he could have stopped the robber. Aunt May wiped away tears and told Peter that she already suspected Peter was Spider-Man because no photographer in New York could get such vivid photos of Spider-Man the way Peter did. She told him that she was proud of him for taking responsibility and helping people in society. With regards to the death of Ben, she said that he would have forgiven Peter, so she will forgive him too. She asked him not to beat himself up about Uncle Ben again. He thanked her and the two cried together. Peter then told Aunt May that he isn't Spider-Man anymore because he did not have the powers again, as they had somehow left him. Aunt May told him that all would be alright and he wouldn't have to worry about it. Harry Osborn sat in his house drinking vodka. He was sad about his best friend, Peter's condition, and he was drinking his sorrows away. The building vibrated with loud thuds. Harry assumed it was the alcohol messing with his brain, until the wall was thrown in front of him. The intruder was the last person in the world he waited to see. He threw his bottle of vodka at Doctor Octavius, who caught the bottle with one of his arms and took it to his lips and took a swig. He flung the bottle to the wall and it broke. Octavius walked to Harry and asked him for more tritium. He said that he needed more of it. Harry scoffed him, saying that he would not give him more tritium so that he could use it to continue his stupid research and blow up New York City again. Octavius then said that he would give him the tritium without Harry's help. With the mechanical arms, he extended a metal pin and stabbed Harry in the chest with it. Harry died. Octavius then walked into the wall and began stabbing it with the arms until he hit reinforced steel. He cleared the area and found a safe. He effortlessly opened it and retrieved a small globe of tritium, the size of a tennis ball. He smiled and said, "Well done, Osborn," and left the house. Peter was getting ready to leave the hospital. He missed his friends and wanted to see them again. He sat on the sofa and tried busying himself as Aunt May was packing things. He picked up the TV remote and turned the TV on. The news anchor announced the death of Harry Osborn, CEO of Oscorp Industries. Peter was shocked. There was a video of Harry's residential building, and Peter saw huge pocket marks on the side. He had no doubts as who had caused them. Dr. Octavius. Aunt May told Peter that she was worried about the death of his friend. Peter was downcast. He turned off the TV and set down the remote control. He picked up that day's edition of the Daily Bugle, and the front page held another surprise for him. Mary Jane Watson had married celebrity astronaut John Jameson. Peter really did not see that one coming. He told May about it, and she said that she had received an invitation, but she forgot all about it because Peter was hospitalized. Suddenly, Peter was aware of the window creaking. The IV tube in his arm popped out painfully as the needle was strangely flying into the window. Aunt May's necklace and earrings had been forcefully removed too. He ran to the window and he saw cars and poles leaning towards a particular location. He saw that they were all attached to the docks. "Oh no," he said out loud. Otto Octavius had switched on his reactor again. He ran towards Aunt May and told her that he needed to go and stop Otto before New York City was destroyed. She kissed him on the forehead and told him to do what he needed to do and that he should be careful. Peter Parker dashed out of the room. Parker entered the dark place. The reactor was in full power and it was larger this time. He called out to Dr. Octavius. The scientist looked back and asked Peter what the hell he was doing here. He then asked Peter to leave, but Parker told him that the reactor will overload like it did the last time, but only this time, New York would be completely destroyed. He begged Dr. Otto Octavius to shut it down. Otto disagreed, saying that he would be able to stabilize it this time. Peter told Otto that the magnetic power was already in full swing and that the whole thing was dangerous. Otto then told Peter to get on board or get out of the way. He then turned his back to his reactor and tried stabilizing it. Peter then saw the heavy-duty cables and rushed to disconnect them. Octavius saw him and used one of his arms to try and stab him. Peter saw the arm coming and he jumped to dodge it, which caused the arm to jam right into one of the cables. The resilient electricity electrocuted Octavius and threw him into a wall, knocking him unconscious. Peter then hurled himself and tried disconnecting all of the cables. He didn't come here as Spider-Man, but as Peter Parker. He then ran away to watch the reactor explode, but that didn't happen. He wondered why and rushed to Otto to ask what was wrong. Octavius came out of his unconsciousness and told Peter that the reactor could not be stopped because it was now self-sufficient. Peter told him to think and fight the AI of the arms to come up with a solution. He reminded Otto of what he had told him about intelligence being a gift to be used for the betterment of all mankind. Otto then told Peter that the only way he was able to bring down the reactor was into the waters. Peter then stood up and summoned up all the faith he had left and hoped what he was about to do would work. He stretched out his arms and shot webs one more time. He was happy it worked. He then proceeded to use all of the energy to pull down the entire structure with him. Dr. Octavius then saw that Peter was Spider-Man and that the fusion reactor was going into the lake. The water then melted the reactor. Then Peter looked at Otto, and a big boom had gone off. The next day, the television was buzzing with the news that the two bodies had washed up on the surface of the lake, and that they were Dr. Otto Octavius and Peter Parker. The news also said that Peter Parker was Spider-Man. Harry Osborn and Peter Parker were buried side by side together. It seemed the entire city had shown up for Peter Parker. Aunt May was beside herself with tears. MJ was there too, to comfort her. MJ on her part was laminating that she had finally understood why Peter had found it hard to be with her, because he was busy stopping crime in New York City as Spider-Man. She said that she was so selfish and didn't even think about him. Her husband, John Jameson, was there to hold her hand. The mayor of New York City was there and gave a full speech and thanked Peter Parker for his selflessness service to the people of New York. He was given the key to the city, and Spider-Man and Peter Parker were both laid to rest. And that is going to be What If the Spider-Man Was Lost Forever? It was a very interesting fan fiction where Spider-Man wasn't there anymore. It was mostly Peter Parker. But it was an interesting final battle where Peter Parker took all of the courage that he finally had left and that he didn't need Spider-Man to finish the job. It was interesting that he and Otto worked together to finally shut the reactor off. I hope you enjoyed this Marvel's What If on Spider-Man 2. It was very interesting to write, and it was amazing to do this story, with different changes in how Harry was killed by Otto, but Otto at the very end was redeemed with Peter. Peter didn't go to the docks as Spider-Man, but he went as Peter Parker to finally put an end to Octavius's plans. I hope you enjoyed this Marvel's What If, and if you would like to see more, and if you have requests, do make sure to follow the subreddit page, my Discord, Facebook, Patreon, join the communities. It's going to be a blast. I have so much brand new content coming out, like it's going to be insane. But that being said, thank you so much for the support. It means a lot. I can't thank you all enough. That being said, tune in every Friday night as a new video will be uploaded. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.